Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. A little bit late this morning. I do apologize. I was otherwise entertained with doing crazy ideas. So I am back. We are here, and we're going to squeeze some lemons. So today we're going to work on an unofficial SDK for LemonSqueezy. I do already have a repo available. It is here. It doesn't really do much, but I'm going to share it anyway. So let me drop that in the comments and get that showing to you all. So if you want to code along or make pull requests or anything at all, you are welcome to do so. Let's get started. So I'm going to focus in on the code today so that we can get something fun done. So we are talking about LemonSqueezy. Who are they? What are they? Why are they? Let's start at the beginning. So they're somewhat of an alternative to Stripe. I suppose they're more focused at creatives and developers, which is amazing. And they have got a very good API. And when I say very good, one of the first sentences in their documentation just made me happy all over. They have a REST API that have predictable resource-oriented URLs. They return valid JSON API encoded responses and use standard HTTP response codes, authentication, and verbs. Now, if that doesn't make you excited, then you're probably on the wrong channel. But for now, we're just going to keep going and let's dive into the SDK. So we've got some official SDKs, JavaScript and TypeScript, and a Laravel SDK, which was created by none other than Dries Vince. It is very good for creating a Laravel implementation, adding a billable model, and just being awesome, basically. It is a fantastic library and it's very, very well built. However, there are cases where you may not want to use it in Laravel. You may not want to use the Laravel version, or you just might fancy doing something a bit different. There are some unofficial SDKs already, so Go, Ruby, Rust, and Swift. And I'm going to be working on a PHP one because I like their API and their design and the company that much. So, hey, Benjamin, how are you? So as you can see, the API documentation, they've got quite a lot going on. And it is also really, really good. Really well written, great documentation, lots of cool stuff to understand the API to start with. So you can use test mode and any API keys created in test mode will interact with your test mode store data. When you're ready to go live, create an API key and use that in your production application. Svelte stream is coming. Don't worry. I will be doing a Svelte stream. I'm looking for someone to help me with it because I'm just terrible with anything JavaScript, TypeScript, anything that's not an API, I pretty much suck at. And that's not an over-exaggeration. So when we make requests, we just send HTTP requests. You've got to send them over HTTPS. Standard calls over HTTP will fail. Also fantastic to see things like that documented. Compatible with JSON API specs. So we've got accept VND API JSON and the content type we send should be that. If we're making a request with a null origin header, then you can use API calls anywhere LemonSqueezy API proxy URL instead. So much information in one page, right? Benjamin, if you're good with Svelte, you are welcome to join me. I need someone to come and teach me Svelte or Svelte in general. I've got the basic grasps of it. I've created a few Svelte components and I did enjoy it, but it wasn't an API. So I ended up just kind of headbutting things and saying, why won't this work? So hello, Dave. How are you doing, my friend? So resource object structure. All API responses follow a document structure outlined in the JSON API spec. We've got a type, an ID, and we've got attributes. It could also contain optional properties such as relationships, links, and meta information. We use authorization bearer tokens. It will be rate limited. There's a limit of 300 API calls per minute. and you will receive a 429 if you go above that. They use conventional HTTP response codes for errors, and they use a JSON API errors array. So you've got a status, a title, and a detail. Like this detail in an API and the API documentation is what sets LemonSqueezy apart for me. They have gone all out in explaining how and why just wonderfully. Pagination. Now, I may get to pagination, I may not. Pagination is a bit difficult when it comes to kind of SDKs, but it's not impossible. There's different kind of methodologies that you can take. You can either go for, I'm going to automatically paginate, or I'm going to kind of enforce manual pagination for when it's needed. Now, making that decision is quite a hard one. You're not too sure which is going to be the best way when it's kind of a client-side implementation. So we'll dive into that if and when we get to that problem. So including related resources, so we can include variants, include customer, all good. And filtering, filter parameter value. Very, very similar to how you'd see me build an API. Like I did not build this API, but if I was to build an API right now, it would look pretty much like this. That's how happy they get the approved by Steve 100%. They obviously got webhooks. They've got an example app. Check out our example app using Vue.js. And that's kind of the main focus there. There is an API changelog, which is pretty cool. But what we're going to start with is the code itself. So what have I got and what have I done? My composer.json, I've got just Steve King LemonSqueezy. Description is it's just an unofficial PHP SDK. It's an MIT license, minimum stability of stable. We're going to auto-load just Steve King LemonSqueezy in the source directory. We're going to focus on PHP 8.3. At this point, if you're building a new package, I don't see why you'd do anything lower than 8.3 unless you needed lower support or you're targeting a community that may not have 8.3 support quite yet. We're obviously going to use PHP HTTP discovery, the factories, and the messages. So this will be a PSR compliant SDK, meaning that I won't ship something like Guzzle with it. We're pulling in Naom's PSR 7 library, a mock client, and those security advisories into our dev dependencies so that we can test things well with those two, and we're not going to pull in any packages that are insecure or have open issues on security perspective that way. We've configured and we're allowing the PHP HTTP discovery plugin. Oh, that was a lot of words and not a lot of time. So we've got our Laravel Pint config set up, but we haven't installed Laravel Pint. So let's get that done. We can compose and require a dev dependency for Laravel Pint. Laravel Pint is now installed. And as you can see, we're going to use a PER preset, which is the newest version of the PHP standard recommendation. You had PSR2, PSR12. Now PER2 is the latest version, and that is what I am focusing on here. Now I've got a lot of rules in here that is more around how I like to code. I handcrafted this slowly. Now I've set final classes to false. May surprise some of you, may not do, but I'm going, because it's an SDK and it's client focused, I'm going to focus on no final classes if possible. There might be a few areas where I include them, but in general, I'm going to go for no final classes. And then lots of other cool stuff, Yoda style, void returns, modernized typecasting, order of use statements and stuff. So we've got a config. So let me just quickly fix that. Now, the config is a final class. I don't want you to override this. This is key to everything working. We've got an API key. You've got to pass that in. A version for the SDK. Now, that's just default right now of 1.0. We'll think about that later. And we've got the base URL. That's never really going to be needed to be overridden, but we've added that in there in case there's a staging URL or anything specific that you need to override on that one. We've got a basic from array, and then we've got a basic to array, just in case we ever need to cast it to an array. We're using array shapes so that we've got good auto completion and that we can get static analysis kind of alerting us if we're ever not doing it correctly. Then we've got our Lemon client. Now, naming wise, I don't know if I'm going to keep it as this, but I've given it the name of Lemon client for now. And that is fine. I'm just going to make that a normal read-only class, not a final read-only class. I don't want this one to be final because people may want to extend and work on their own particular way. Now, obviously, because it's LemonSqueezy, the static method or the static constructor is called squeeze. So we can say Lemon client squeeze, pass in our configuration. We get auto discovery on the client. We're going to use a plugin client, and then we're going to pass everything in there. So if I open up the README, I can show you roughly kind of the experience that I'm aiming for here. So we will have our client, and this will be a Lemon client, and we're going to squeeze. And the config that we want to pass in is going to be an array. But this is going to be a typed array. So if we come back over to here, this argument here, this array, we want to pass in the API key as a string. And that is the only thing I'm going to enforce right now. So come back over to the README so we can work through this. And just bump that over. That's one thing I don't like about Markdown and PHP Storm is that it doesn't format things the way I'd like it to. So the API key is going to be whatever that API key might be. I'll just stick a random UUID in there for now. At this point, I should have a LemonSqueezy client that I can start working with. That is the aim. Now, up here, we're going to have a public const string version. Like this. And we're just going to say 1.0.0. So when we come down to the config, we're going to grab this config here. And we're going to array merge. The array itself is going to be config. And then we're going to merge in version and self version done. So basically, you can pass in any version, but I'm going to override it anyway, so just don't. What I will also do is base URL will be a nullable string. Listening in the background while you hack on some code. I am doing good, thank you, Haz. How are you? How is Finland and how is life? I've not spoken in a little while. So let me just quickly do this. And what we'll do is also say that the base URL is going to be... Okay, let's just go back to the config quickly and make sure I grab the right one. So we don't actually need that, but we're going to pass it anyway, just to be safe. Like this. So if you don't pass it, we're going to pass it, but we don't need to pass it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Enjoying the weather. I bet you've got a lot of snow right now up in Finland. So here is how we create it. We've got a plugin client. We're going to find the compatible version. Now, this won't work yet because we've not installed one. Nothing to worry about just yet. And then plugins. We're going to look at adding some plugins in a little while. We're going to look at how we can do that, though. So we'll come back to that little part. If we come back over to... We've got a HTTP plug tutorial. This is what we are using. So we've got a message factory discovery. Got lots of stuff, asynchronous clients, lots of cool stuff going on. But what we want to do is plugins. Now, we have got an authentication plugin. We want to create an authentication plugin straight away. So how do we want plugins to be registered? What I'm going to do, factories, I'm going to create a plugin factory. Because what I want to do is have a way that I can easily add and override these things. So we're going to have a public static function default. Yeah, spell it right, Steve. Default, which will return an array of stuff. So that in our Lemon client here, plugin factory default, that will handle all of that. So what do we want? We know we need authorization, right? Yep, PHP Stand t-shirt is 100% what we need here. We need the PHP Stand gods with us. So let's start with a new authentication plugin. Now, the authentication method that we want is the bearer, I believe. Yep. So that means that the token we need to pass in like this. So our Lemon client down here, default, we need to pass in token, config, API key, sorted. Now, if we just run PHP Stand quickly, Stand is not defined. I'm going to need to define that. So let's come down and just above config, scripts, we want Stan, and we want to run vendor bin PHP Stan analyze. Analyze. We want to set the memory limit to 3 gig so it never runs out. And I probably need to get that installed as well. So composer, require, dev, PHP Stan, PHP Stan. LemonSqueezy do have an official package for Laravel. And it is fantastic, but you don't always want to use that one. Like if you're not using Laravel, that package is no good. If you're using something else, or there might be 100 reasons why you might not want to use it. If you want to have a really deep Sorry, my internet farted. If you want to have that deep integration between Laravel and LemonSqueezy, the official Laravel integration is perfect. If you want to control it yourself or integrate it slightly differently, you need something else, which is why I'm doing this. And yes, the screen died, my internet farted. I do apologize. So we've got errors. We've got errors. Method, plugin factory default return type has no value specified in iterable array. Shame. The shame. So authentication plugin. Let's see if that still fails. 2 errors. Base URL expects a string null given. Squeezies. Where is Squeezy? Config, string. I'm going to enforce a couple of things. That should help with that because our current method will allow it. And now we've got no errors. The only problem, this plugin factory, it's not just going to be an authentication plugin. This will be a plugin interface. Is that it? I don't know. Is it? Authentication plugin, implements plugin, client common plugin. Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. Now, I don't like it that it does it that way. So we are going to say we're going to return int and plugin. Obviously not removing the array part because that was silly. Now, there are other plugins we might want to include. So let's go have a quick look. We've got the authentication down to a key. Cache plugin, content type plugin. Now the content type plugin, for now, the plugin can only detect JSON or XML content. Okay. Header plugin, what does that do? New header defaults plugin. This is what I need. I need to set some defaults. New header default plugin. Simplify that one. Now, what argument does this take? This takes headers. Now, we want to accept application VND plus, no, wait for it. I did that wrong. Test mode, no, this .api plus JSON. How can I get that wrong? The amount of times I've typed that. And the content type will be application / VND.api plus JSON. Then what we're also going to do is we want to do the user agent. I find it is always important to add this. LemonSqueezy PHP client dash, comma, lemon client version. Done. So we'll get that coming through and it will look nice. Are there any other headers that we might want to do? There might be. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Typo in the word squeezy. Okay, just save squeezy. There might be like connection keep alive. There might be a million other headers that we might want, but we can come back to stuff like that quite easily. Got an error plugin, history plugin, cookie decoder, request URI, redirect query, logger, retry, stopwatch. So many different plugins, but I'm not going to dive too much into those because that will take us literally the rest of the week to go through and get all of the potentials that we might optionally want. For now, we'll focus on this. So, my wife just dropped off a parcel.
I think it's from work. Look, Merry Christmas.
It is from work. That reminds me, I need to do Secret Santa. Remind me later.
I was trying to sneak in to not ruin the thing for the record.
I was expecting coffee.
Would you like one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
My wife is bringing me coffee. We have a result.
Your cup in it?
So I think for now, the plugin factory is good enough. We've got everything set up the way we want it to. So this will just work. What I might do is tinkerwell it quickly, just so that we can play a little bit while we're going ahead. Ignore, this is my talk from Laracon. I am going to be recording the video for that soon. So I think you might enjoy that when it is eventually here. So, come on, over this screen. So let's just set the directory. We want to do this in the LemonSqueezy. I've got so many projects in here that I just play with. I open this, we are good, and we don't need Docker setup. So client equals lemon client squeeze config is an API key. Let's see if it works. I'm running 8. Since when did I run 8.2? What's going on with this? Configure Docker. I'm not running Docker. What's going on? Settings. No. That isn't what I'm using. Let's just do which PHP. That is the PHP that I want. I haven't reconfigured stuff for a while, so I do apologize. Let's just drop that in. There we go. All good. I have coffee in. Oh, my camera's not on, so we can't get the joke. My wife brought me a rude cup.
Is the Wi-Fi too bad?
No, it's just focusing on code.
Have fun, everyone.
We will. We always have fun in this place. There we go. Right, we need to install a package that implements a HTTP client implementation. For example, okay, I'll update that later. Milk, no sugar, thanks, Amy. Right, I'm just going to pull this one in as a dev dependency.
Oh, it'll have to be collection.
It'll have to be collection, unfortunately it has. So we're going to require this in as a dev dependency. Let's just always add, and now we can rerun that. And we've got a config. We've got a LemonSqueezy client with an API key, the version, the base URL. Then we've got the plugin client, and then it's got all of the different stuff that it's going to need to do stuff. Definitely a long flight for coffee. To be fair, it isn't like a handmade coffee. It's a Dulce Gusto coffee machine coffee. So, you know, it's probably cheaper to buy your own machine at this point, Has. I'm not going to lie to you. So let's focus on actually building this. So what we have is we've got all these different resources. We've got users, stores, customers, products, variants, prices, files, orders, order items, subscriptions, invoices, items, usage, discounts, lots of stuff. I'm going to just collapse all of these so that we can kind of focus in on the first thing. Now let's look at users. Retriever user, user me. We can get the authenticated user. I don't think that's useful right now. So what I'm going to do is focus it in on the stores, the store object, retrieve a store, and list all stores. So we've got this concept of stores. So what I'm going to do is create a new directory called resources. And we're going to create a new store resource. Now this store resource is going to have certain things in it. So what we need is a new trait, concerns, and we'll say, I don't know, can squeeze lemons as a trait. So this will be the constructor, public function, construct, and this is going to get a protected read-only lemon client in as the client. So that'll store resource, use can squeeze lemons. So now we've got that injected in our lemon client. I just collapse some of the stuff that's going to be in the way. We'll start listing out our resources. So public function stores. This is going to return a store resource. So we want to return a new store resource where the client is this. That's all we need to do at this point, right? So that can squeeze lemons is all good. The lemon client is now up to date and the plugin factory is fine. So what we want to do is be able to list everything. So if I just refresh that now, we've got everything that we might need all there. Excellent. So we've got a client and we're going to say stores. If we refresh that, we've now got a store resource that can access the client. Perfect. We are making progress. So we want to be able to list all stores. And to me, an all would make sense from a method naming perspective. Always going to be final classes. Now, certain things won't be final classes. Certain things will. So public function all. This is going to return all stores for the user. Now, if we come back and we just say stores all, obviously that's not going to do anything. It's returning null because I'm not doing anything just yet. So what we want to do is we want to build a request, send request through our client, transform the request, return a more contextual object. So that's kind of like the approach that we take to return all stores for the user. So to build a request, we need a method. So let me just fix this, and public function build request here. So we want to use return PSR 17 factory. No. PSR factory discovery, find request factory, and create a request. Now we need the method and the URI. So this build request needs to accept a method and a URI. And this should return a request interface. So what I like to do is composer require something that I built because it allows me to do things a bit better. So the method is actually going to be a method enum. So we can say that the method value and the URI will be the URI. That works. So we know we can do that. Send request through our client. That bit is relatively easy. So let's start. Our request is going to be this build request where the method is method get, and the URI is going to be v1 we've already got, stores. So if we just go back and check this, have we got a last? No, we don't have a last double slash. That is good. So what we want is stores. We've got a request, sending it through to our client. We can get our response and we can say this client. We want to send a request at this point. So we kind of need a helper method on our Lemon client down here, which will be a public function send. Now, what this will do, it will accept a response, a request interface as the request, and it will return a response interface. So we're going full on PSR here. So return this client, send request, where the request is that request, and that's all we need to do. Now, this could fail. Could throw a client thingy, what's it? Why is that? Don't know why that's complaining. We'll come back to that. Okay, so this client send, the request is the request. At this point, we've got a response. So we can wrap this in a try catch. So try to get the response. We're going to catch anything that is throwable as an exception, and we're going to handle that here. So now we can fix that whole file, and we can create some exceptions. So I always found that when you're building exceptions, you need to be relatively specific. So what I'm going to do is stores failed to fetch all stores exception. Now that's wordy as heck, but it works. Extends exception let's just simplify that and do this. So at this point, we are going to throw failed to fetch all stores. Let's just fix that. New. Now, the message is failed to fetch all stores from the LemonSqueezy API. The code is exception code, and the previous is the exception. Now, what we want to do is add the doc for that, and that's all good. At this point, we've handled it. We've thrown a useful exception. We've said that what we've failed to do, so that if we're ever going through our error logs, if we're ever going through whatever we do to catch and monitor our exceptions, we're seeing that, oh, we failed to fetch all stores. That must mean that's where I'm trying to get them. You're just about to use LemonSqueezy for my personal project. Fantastic. People want to use LemonSqueezy. They're fantastic. I absolutely love them. Right, so we want to transform this request. Now, there's a million ways that we can do this. We can manually map them and build them. We can guess. We can do a lot of things. But being me, I noticed something the other day. Frank de Jonge. He released something the other day. I saw it. I paid attention to it. Where was it? It might have been under the PHP League. I saw it. I can't not see it. It was there. I saw it. You can't hide it from me. You can't hide it from me forever. Found you. Object mapper. Ta-da! Updated 3 days ago. Now, I don't know if this is available yet, so we're going to try it. Let's try it. Try it and see. No. So, right, let's, I don't know, packages.org, like PHP League, object. Oh, that's the PHP League, I think. Object. It's not there, is it? Why are you doing this to me? League object mapper. There it is. Dev main. I'm risking it for biscuit and I'm pulling it. Done. Right, the reason I'm going to do something like this is because I want to have contextual objects. I want things to be nice. So I'm going to create some data objects in here. And we're going to create one straight away for a store. If we come back to the documentation, what does it return? Links, data type, stores, attributes. Attributes is what I care about at this point. So a name, a slug, a domain, URL, avatar URL, plan, country, nice name, lots of stuff. So grab that so we don't have to keep switching. And let's just drop that in there. And let's start. So public function construct. What we're going to have is a public read-only string for the name, public read-only string for the slug. Hey JS, how you doing, buddy? Public read-only string for the domain, public read-only string for the URL. Zoop. Let's scroll down a little bit. Have a public read-only string for the avatar URL, public read-only string for the plan, public read-only string for the country, read-only string for the country nice name, public read-only string for the currency. Then we're going to have some ints, public read-only int for total sales, public read-only int for total revenue. Now, this total revenue, I think, could potentially be a float, or could even be null. There is that option. Public read-only, again, null, float, int for 30-day sales, public read-only, null, float, int 30-day revenue. Then we're going to have some kind of date stamps. Why not multi-select and paste in the constructor? Because I'm Steve. The only way I can explain it. So date time immutable on the created at, and public read-only date time immutable on the updated at. Now what I want to do is simplify that, get rid of all that, and we've got a store. Da-da-da. Hate it that it does that. I hate it that it does that. Why does it do it to me? Yeah, that's something that we used to do with our code, and I don't think many of us still do it. Don't know. Do you? Do you do it? Do you still do it? Do you align your properties? I mean, I don't see the biggest value in it, personally. Might be useful for someone, not useful for me. If anything, it's just an irritation. A massive irritation. Because then I've got to go ahead and do this, and it just takes time, and nobody wants to watch me delete spaces. Right, now let's just fix that bit, and we can say public static. Align properties are easier for you. Well, boo. Okay. Okay, so from response, what we're getting back in here is a response interface, which is a response. And what we want it to return is a store. So, no, is it? No. We want to, we're going to get an array of data. So what we do at this point is we use this library that I found and saw and must use is hydrate object. Here's a mapper, example command, object mapper using reflection. Simple doc comment ensures that arrays of objects are automatically constructed. Lots of cool things, lots of ways to do this. And this, I believe, this came about from the event source hydrator, which kind of did something similar, but he's kind of created this now. So let's use it. So our mapper is a new object mapper using reflection. So we're going to return a mapper something, hydrate object. The class name is going to be store, and the payload is data. Inline. Yeah, I don't want to do that. So parameter data with no value type specified. So this is going to get an array of stuff. It's going to come back through as string mixed, and that's all good. No, I'm not using that right now. Haven't even tried it yet. So what we want this to do is, in here, we want to kind of take this response and kind of map it to a object at this point. So if we work with this response itself, we need to get content and get body. Get the body, get contents. That gives us a string. This is a string. That's not useful to me. That gives me a JSON string, and it's all well and good. But we want to JSON decode that JSON. And yes, we want an associative array out of it. And the flags that we might want to add are, I don't know, JSON throw one error. Depth we don't care about. Now at this point we've got an array. So we can actually do something with this array. Our data is that. Fix that whole file. There we go. Now this is going to say taking advantage of it. I don't get why this always happens. Anytime I add JSON throw an error, PHP Storm just doesn't detect it here. Just confuses me. Now we could just return an array of objects, but I like collections. I'm pretty sure Ben Ramsey built something for it, but I'm going to come back to that part because I don't think it's hugely important right now. So we are going to return an array map. And we're going to simplify that because it's complaining. Now the array that we're going to pass through is the data, and the callback is going to be store from response data. Now the payload that we get back is going to be response data. We want to wrap, response, I don't know, data. I think it should be for now. Why is this complaining? Oh, wait a minute. I know why. And this should receive an array of data within it. And there we go. Oh no. We're going to say store, and down here we're going to say data, and up here we're just going to pass through store. That should be a little bit nicer. Now, why is that complaining? Okay, yeah, not interested. And this should return a store back. Cannot access offset data unmixed. So one way to get around this is a little bit hacky. We can say var array data, and this has meta as an array, JSON API as an array, links as an array, and data as an array. That should fix that. Then this can actually be static. This bit I'm just going to ignore. Like if I click that, it does the same thing, but it adds it twice. I don't get it. Just why? Like, okay, so bang. Failed to fetch all stores from LemonSqueezy API. We failed, which is good. We expected that to fail. So let's just undo that because that's silly. Okay, you're silly. No, I haven't got a new mic. I'm just using my new mic. Let me what settings am I using? Audio, I am using my Shure MV7. I've just put it in a new place. Let me just go back to my camera quickly. It is, in fact, like there. And I'm just kind of sat cross-legged on my chair trying to build stuff. Right, coffee. At this point, we can kind of get all of our stores, and it's wonderful, right? We're going to come back to testing, I think. Retrieve a specific store given a specific ID. So a lot of this is kind of repetitive. So we will come back to it. We want to say public function find string int ID, and this will eventually return a store. So we build the request, get the response, and potentially fail. This is kind of the repetitive part right now. Like, we're going to do something kind of similar. The only difference is we're changing the URL, and we are going to put in the ID. Still doing a get request. We're still going to get the response and potentially throw an exception with a message. And then we're going to work with the response. So we're going to basically get the response in the same way. And at this point, the data that comes back is going to be, well, it's still going to be an array because we're kind of JSON decoding to an associative array. But we're going to have a flat array at this point. So we should be able to say store from response data. Well, data, sorry. So as you can see, a lot of this is kind of repetitive, and it's going to be similar throughout a lot of them. So we can create a new concern. This concern is going to be a new trait for those who aren't Laravel headed like me. Can build request. Make a trait. So this will have a public function build request. This will have a method. It will have a string for the URI, and it will return a request interface. Now, this will have a property available to it. So if I come back to restore resource or the can squeeze lemons, we should have this lemon client available through millions of different ways. So property read lemon client as client. So I can return, where am I? So many things open. Don't need config open. Don't need that open or that open right now. We want the store resource, and what we want to do is this build request. Build request already there? Can squeeze lemons. Yes, we've already got it. Okay, so we're just going to delete that. We're just going to keep it on can squeeze lemons. So we've got a build request. That is all in one place. Perfect. Now, try and catch is kind of the same thing everywhere, other than the message and the type of exception that is passed through. I might do the same thing, keep it. That bit there, that is what I'm going to extract next. Can squeeze lemons. And then we're going to have a public function decode response. We're going to get a response interface for that response, and we're going to return an array. And we're going to return that. No, we're not. We're going to grab that. we're going to say that we are going to return that, which means that this, like that, should be a little bit nicer. Remove this. That's still going to complain, but right now, I don't care. So at this point, I can say I can remove this comment, and this I can say data is this decode response, and it does the same thing. And if we come up, we can do that. Just like that. Decode response. That'll throw stuff, but we'll worry about that in a little while. We can actually kind of move that up to this block nicely. And again, same with that one. We can move that up because it will just catch something and just fail to fetch. Here's why. Here's a previous. Good coffee. Send request through to our client, build the request. You know, we can, you know, shorten this by doing this, pulling that up so that each method is only kind of doing what it actually has to do. Like this. Now it's complaining because no specified stuff in the array. So it's going to return an array of int store. Are you happy now? And then this one, we can just do that. Returns that, does stuff, and we're good. So at this point, we can find a store, or we can get all stores through the API. Not tested, so, you know, maybe don't take my word for it just yet. That bit, I like to be at the bottom on a separate line. Can squeeze lemons. This is complaining, but I don't care. That's all that, that's all that. And JSON decode. That should handle that. That's all of that stuff. That's all good. So we can squeeze some lemons. We can build a store. Don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to doc block that. Like, I don't need to because it's got types, but I do it when I'm finished with a class typically. That is now all good. So we can add a comment of what it returns. That all returns that. And it returns a response interface. So that is good. Update that. That's all good. That's all good. That is all good. And that is all good. I add these doc blocks when I'm at a point where I think I'm done with that class for now, or at least that method. So we can get stores. Get all stores. We can say client stores all. Get a specific store. Client stores find where the ID is 1. We can work with stores. So that part is all good. We can move forward. Customers, the customer object in creating a customer. So that's like our next step is basically at this point, we're just rinsing and repeating. So we can say customer resource. We say that it can squeeze lemons. So list all customers. We just, again, public function all. This will return an array. At this point, we want to try to build the request this build request method get URI is customers. The data at this point is going to be this client, or sorry, this decode the response. The response is going to be this client send the request is that we've decoded the response to an array. At this point, we want to try and catch something that is throwable, call it an exception, simplify that, create another exception here, and we'll just call that failed to fetch all customers. Again, this one will extend exception, simplify that one, and we can throw new failed to fetch all customers with a message of failed to fetch all customers from the Lemon Squeezy API. Now the code, again, is the exception get status or get code, and the previous is the exception. So at this point, we've done it all. And now, again, we can return an array map. And let's just simplify that one. The array will be data and the callback will be a static function that will take in an array for the customer, and it will return something back. As you can see, once you've kind of nailed down the how I want to do this, it is so easy to create. We can create a customer data object. And at this point, we can just grab all of that, drop it in there, and start building out our data object. And suddenly, SDKs aren't so scary, right? So public function, construct. So we have a public read-only int for store ID. Public read-only string for the customer's name. Public read. Actually, I built something for this. Let me grab that and see if I've still got it available. Let's go to warp. Let's full screen it. Let's cd tools converter go run main.go. I have got JSON go run main.go JSON. So required flag class JSON not set. How did I use this again? Let me clear that, and we'll go history grep go run main.go JSON. I did it once upon a time. Cannot remember how. I've probably got it on GitHub. Let's go check. GitHub.com. Just Steve King converter. I can't remember how I do this. JSON -c, give it a name, and then stuff. Okay, so let's go back to my terminal. Run main.go JSON. The class is going to be customer, and the JSON is going to be that. And look at that. Read only class, done. So let's just see if that looks good. Bang. Why is that complaining? Okay, that's not a problem. I'm going to swap all of this to public. Got mixed on some things. It's not perfect, but you know what? That is a lot quicker than typing it, right? Cool. Pixel file. Ta-da! So, city. When the city comes back, what is it actually? City is null or string, I'm assuming. So anywhere where that is, I'm just going to quickly override and say, there you go, you got that. Anywhere else mixed. So overall, yeah, a little bit quicker, right? A little bit. You can actually, I'll send that link in the chat quickly. It's really useful for like just general stuff. It's a Go program that I wrote that will work from the CLI. And what you can do is turn JSON and YAML into PHP data objects quickly. Pass something like that in, and you get something like that out. YAML in progress, come back. So JSON schema, so convert a JSON payload into a JSON schema. I pass with a JSON, and I get a JSON schema back. I'm pretty sure I did a couple of other things. YAML might actually be working, but I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Yeah, I really can't remember. It's been a while since I've touched that, like 3 months. I did it for fun and kind of forgot about it. So total revenue currency should be an int. That's all good, all good, all good, all good. Cool. Customer resource is not quite done yet. So at this point, I want to say customer response, and we're going to pass through data of customer. Now I just need to go implement that. So public static function from response. Now it's going to be the same thing as this. From response, just passing in a different class there. Okay, so I should be able to say that. And I should, in theory, be able to say that and that. And then extract this and use it as a trait. Because I'm going to have a lot of these, right? Concerns. And we're going to say can be high rated as a trait. There we go. So now if we come back to our store, we can remove that. And we're going to say that this can be hydrated. Use can be hydrated. Now I can copy that over to the customer, delete that, and drop that in. It's going to add that in. We'll kind of worry about fixing that in a second. So all of that can be hydrated, an array of URLs. So URLs is string. Any other arrays, that should be it. So we should be good. So that all works. My customer resource is now looking good. This is going to return a customer. And suddenly we've got a lot of things. Oh, I just realized that was still up there. Suddenly we've got a lot of things that are just going to work out the box, be really easy to use. And we're just going to do that. Going to give an array of int customer, and that's it. Jobbed. How easy is that, right? Like, super easy to work with. The process is build up this really nice and easy to use client that's doing all of the detection and header setting and everything out of the box. Get it to return itself. Then start working with these. So we can then say public function customers. It's going to return a customer resource. Return a new customer resource where the client is a client. Right? This. Now we can say get all customers. Client customers all. Predictable, repeatable, so easy to work with, right? I'm going to put my camera back on so you can see the smugness on my face. It's so easy, right? And again, if we come back to the store resource, oh, look, we want to also find something. So let me take this method. Let me take this over to the customer. Yeah, customer, that's what I'm talking about. And look, we drop that in. We can say failed to fetch customers, failed to fetch store from the LemonSqueezy API. Then this is going to say customer. Then this is going to be a customer. Oof. Customer. This is going to be a customer. Failed to fetch all customers. Customers. You know, and we can, just make this all clean, all easy, no hassle. Drop that. And oh, look, it worked. Response, I don't know why that's got a wiggle expected. Okay, so we also need that. And that. Somewhere. Oh, how's that one? That one should line up there. That one should line up there. And we're all good. So there we go. Customers get. Now, what we could probably do is have a parent at this point, right? We're getting to that point where, like, we do it in a lot of the same stuff. Do we need to be so specific? Probably not. So what I'm going to do is we're going to say, okay, let's create an abstract resource. So this is one of the kind of inheritance over composition situations, right? So we want an abstract that can squeeze lemons. Always going to be built the same way. Function all, and it's going to return an array. Now, if we come back to customer resource, it's going to do basically this. It's going to do that. Now, these data objects are all somewhat similar. So let's come over to here. We're going to say, let's create this, contracts, and we're going to create a data object contract. Now, all of these data objects want to have object contract here. We want to hydrate it a specific way. So this will take an array and it will do that. Now that array could differ, right? String mixed, blah, blah, blah. Like that. And we're just going to grab that and we're going to do that. And then that should be nice. So then we can take this data object contract, say that our store implements that. Now, all of that should all be good. That's all good. That's already implemented. Our customer will also implement that, and that is already passing and all mixing and fantastic. So let's just close all of that down and come back to where we were. So contracts, data objects, and the abstract resource here. So this is going to return an array of kind exception face, fine, JSON exception, fine. We will keep that like that. And this is going to return an array of int data object contract. So at this point, we've got an abstract resource. We're going to try and make a request. We're going to do this in some way. So what's probably good to do at this point is come to here. Is that all? Yeah, that's all. So let's just drop that for now. This will extend the abstract resource. We're going to have a public function, I don't know, resource path, which will return a string. So what this will do is return stores done. So down here, where we're getting stores for all, we can say this resource path. Now this needs to be an abstract method. Abstract public function that return the string sorted. That is now working as I would expect it. Exception, we want to be able to kind of, I don't know, abstract public function. I don't know, we're just going to call it exception for now, and this should return something that is throwable. So then on this store resource, it's going to tell me that I need to implement that. So what we can do is say public function exception. This should return a throwable, and we're just going to return this. Now, what I actually want that to do is it should accept a throwable and return a new throwable. Exception. Exception spelled the correct way, of course. So then this will then accept a throwable as an exception, and it can just return that. That is how that part will work. So that in our abstract resource over here, we can say throw this exception, where the exception is the one that we just caught, right? Nice and clean, pretty easy to do. Then at this point, we want to say, okay, so what is that? So that is going to take an array and turn the response to a data object. So we're going to want a new abstract resource, and we're going to, abstract method, abstract public function, create data object. That's going to accept an array in of data, and it's going to return a data object contract of some description. So over here, we can say public function, create data object. Now what this will do is this. That's going to say it's not got an iterable array. So the data is at this point going to be string mixed, because it can be varied. we could probably take that, add that to there. We can add some doc blocks, add some more doc blocks, like that, like that. That's all looking good. That's all looking good. Then this part here, we can basically say this create data object. The data is the customer at this point. So that's all done. That's variable. That will need to do that, and this will return a data object contract, and that part is all fine. That part is again fine. Undefined variable this, because I've got static in it. I can remove the static and that should be fine. So we've got the resource path, we've got all the abstract methods all done. When we're listing all things, we are pretty good. Fix that whole file and see what it's complaining about. There we go. So now that store resource is pretty good. That data mixed given string mixed. Okay, so this should be an array of string mixed apps. There we go. Maybe, I don't know. We'll figure that part out later. So there's that create data object, exception, resource path, and it can squeeze lemon, so I can remove that. Now to find is going to do exactly the same thing. But what we'll do before that is come back to this customer resource. And where we've got that all, we can just delete it. And we can say that this customer resource extends the abstract resource and the method stubs. Let's fix that whole file quickly. Override, I don't add those. I don't know if there's any benefit to adding these overrides. Let me know in the comments if you think there is a benefit to it. To me, I'm not sold yet. Not yet. There we go. That's all that. Create a data object. Okay, so we just want to be able to undo that, grab that, do that, and then this. All this needs to have at this point is to return customers. Then all we need to do next is, yeah, that was easy. Let's just copy bytes and let's just refactor that. They're even easier to work with. Let me grab that and all of the docs, doc block. So that's going to complain, but I'm not going to worry about that. This abstract resource, now we want to also be able to find it. So find, throws, throwable, all good. This decode response, this resource path followed by the ID, all good. Then we're going to want to throw this exception, where the exception is the exception. Then we are going to want to return this data object, data, done. Create data object. This will return a data object contract, like so. That part, all of that is good. So now we can come over to our customer resource, and that should be it. And the store resource, and that should be it. What we could even, no, won't worry about that. Won't worry. No. Calm down, Steve. Don't need that. So our resources are suddenly super simple, super clean, super easy. Come back to our README. Everything is all working. Get a specific customer, client, customers, find ID is 1. That is how you build an SDK, people. That is how you do it. Like, all I've now got to do is go through, listening all, finding, creating, updating, and deleting. I've just got to add those abstract methods, and it'll all work the same way. I can create a data object and a contract around how I want things to be created, so I can be very specific on that creation pattern, and then it still just ties into everything that's already there. So for now, I think that's probably it for the day. I've done about an hour 25 minutes ish. Oof, I'm a bit big there. Yeah, that's how you go around building these SDKs. All you then need to do is write a good test suite around all of those different things that you've done, add a resource, generate a few basic tests around it because you know all the underside stuff is working, and you've got an SDK that's repeatable, usable, super clean, wonderful to work with. And the kind of the approach that you take is clean. It's easy, it's extendable, and I just can't explain enough how easy and nice it is to work with. So that is me for the day. Thank you very much. Stay awesome. I'm going to go do some more work. I'll catch you next time. Probably not tomorrow. Going to be a little bit busy. Thursday. Let me know on Twitter or in the comments when you want to see me stream next. Do you want to see me keep working on this SDK? Do you want to see me, I don't know, juggle? I can't juggle, so maybe not that one. Let me know. Catch you next time. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to be hearing about the next one. And I shall see you in the Twitterverse. Goodbye.